Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
This morning, just before we gathered together here, I thought I better make a hotel reservation. I called, and they answered, Best Western, and I said, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
That might be the worst dad joke so far.
Well, I'll see if I can top that next time.
We got an email from a listener. It says, Dear Transcendent, a close friend recommended your podcast to me, and it's been a source of comfort as I've wrestled with my concerns about my son. I've listened to a few episodes so far, including the one with the Catholic lesbian and the one with Raya's mom. And I want to thank you for the supportive and non-judgmental way that you approach your topics. I'm writing because I suspect that my son might be gay. While I love him dearly, I have to admit that this possibility deeply troubles me. I was raised to believe that this lifestyle isn't right, and I'm struggling to reconcile those beliefs with my love for him. Your discussions have helped me see the importance of preserving our relationship, but I still find it hard to fully accept this. I would really appreciate any guidance you could offer on how to navigate this situation without compromising my values or losing my connection with my son. Sincerely, and we'll call her Mindy. Well, Mindy, thank you so much for your letter to us, and this is a hard one.
Well, it certainly is. My first reaction is that no matter what your opinion is, it is most important that your son feels loved and accepted, and that is critical. I would say more than anything else, that's the most important part.
I want to start this conversation off by just saying we are certainly no experts. We have gone through this with ourselves. I'm transgender, and so we've gone through this in our family. And all we can do is say, this is our story, and we're doing our best to help others through this, but every story is different. We wish both of you luck on your journey, and we just want to say we're really rooting for you. We're rooting for your relationship, that everything would be healthy between the two of you. But with that said, we've got some ideas. Dad and I talked about this a little bit, and we did put together some ideas of some things that we think might help and some things that have helped us as we've gone through our own relationship.
When Maya first came out and said that she felt she was transgender, my first reaction was to say nothing at all. I thought that was important, and I didn't react with any expression. I just was there, really kind of absorbing the whole thing, not in a shocked way or a surprised way, but in a way that said, count to 10 before you do anything, which I didn't actually think of. However, I did take that time. And when I did have a thought, my first thought was, either I accept her or I lose her. There is nothing in between. And so step one is to determine, are you going to reject her forever or him forever? Yeah. And in your letter, clearly, you say you love your son. So that's important. So you want to preserve that relationship above everything else.
I have a friend that I've had for 20, maybe 25, maybe 30 years that I knew from well before I transitioned, and I know that he is not supportive of my transition. And yet he has wanted to maintain a respectful relationship and wanted to maintain our friendship. We're not as close as we were before, but that has as much to do with distance and not living geographically close like we used to, as it does with anything else. But he's been very clear that he's been respectful the whole time. But I know that he is not, he is accepting, but he's not affirming. Now, he's asked me a few times, how do I interact with you? And I said, look, here's the first thing is that it's okay for you to use my name right now, not the name that you knew me as beforehand. And it's okay to use my pronouns. Now, again, this is going to be a little different than your situation here, Mindy, since you're only suspecting about your son. And of course, your son is likely not transgender, although we don't know. I mean, you there may be other gender issues going on there. But the point is, I told my friend, it's all right to go ahead and call me by my name because I've legally changed that. And it's all right to go ahead and use my pronouns right now. I don't think that you are compromising your values by referring to me how I want to be referred to. And I would say then for you, as you're dealing with your son, you don't need to compromise your values. Believe me, he knows where you stand on things. You want to overcorrect on ways of being supportive. Oftentimes when people are saying, I'm not affirming, I'm accepting, but I'm not affirming, people feel like they need to go way out of their way to make it very, very clear that they're not affirming. No, what you want to do is make it very, very clear that you're accepting, that you love him no matter what. And that's going to bring us to our first point.
Yes, and that first point is start by reflecting on your own feelings. Where are you? What are your feelings exactly? And being true to yourself to say, this is what I really think. It can be helpful to explore why you feel the way you do about the possibility of your son being gay. And what can be helpful about that is to understand yourself first. Understand your own emotions, and that'll give you clarity. That will give you a map on where to go, to give you an idea of what roadblocks you might encounter. That, I would say, would be step one.
Right. Now, Mindy, you didn't give us any reasons why you're feeling that way. You just said that you don't, let's see, how did you say it in there? That you don't, you were raised to believe that this lifestyle isn't right. So we don't know if it's religious based or is it based on, and maybe you're not even sure. Where are your feelings coming from? And I would explore that first. Now, I can only draw on our experiences here. And for me, my issue is being transgender. But if I had been born with female genitalia, you would have accepted me right away. You would have accepted, oh, we had a baby girl, and you would have been happy about that. The fact that it was much later in life that I came and said, you know what, I think that living as a man is not right for me, and I transitioned to be a woman, it took a little while longer because you'd built a lot of assumptions and a lot of feelings about who you thought that I was based on how you raised me and who we were together.
And the fact that you were married and had 7 children and were 40 years old.
Right. So there was a lot of history there that had to change. And yet, if that history wouldn't have been there, and you had had me right away as a little baby girl, you would never have thought twice about it.
Right.
So don't let that history get in the way. It's certainly something that you want to treasure and you want to be glad for the time that you've had together. But yet also let your son be whoever he is and accept him for who he is, the same as you would have accepted him when he was first born. When you don't know him, you don't know anything about him, anything like that. Now, another piece, too, as you reflect on your feelings, may be just the sense of mourning, because oftentimes we can project our own hopes for our descendants. This podcast is called Transcendent because we wanted to think about those family relationships and being a descendant. And you may be wondering, well, how am I going to have offspring? You don't say whether or not your son is an only son. But I can understand if you were really hoping that he would grow up and marry a nice girl and settle down and have children and raise a family and go on, that could be very difficult. And so you'll want to explore all of those. In fact, if you're not seeing a therapist, it might be worth seeing if you can meet with somebody and discuss some things that you can do.
take the time to educate yourself. I am really surprised at how many people don't do that. That they're just think, this is the situation, this is where I'm at. Educating yourself will make a big difference in just understanding how many different ideas and thoughts and styles of life are out there. And when you do that, you'll learn so much, not only about your son, but also about yourself. Learning more about what it means to be gay and the experiences of LGBTQ individuals, whether it's gay or lesbian or whatever it is, can help you approach the situation with greater empathy. You begin to understand because you're learning. And I will tell you, we've been doing this podcast now for 2 years, and I've done a lot of education just in preparing for this.
Educating yourself.
Yes. And I have learned a lot, but I still have a lot to learn. I think that's something we never stop doing, is learning and educating ourselves.
Anytime there's somebody that you don't know much about, the best thing that you can do is get to know somebody. They say that for any kind of resolving conflicts, this is one of the best things that you can do. And in fact, negotiators, when they're coming in and trying to settle major conflicts, and find peace between warring sides when they're trying to end wars and that sort of thing, one of the best things that they can do is help both sides get to know people on the other side, because it's easy to villainize people that you don't know. Now, in your case, with your son, you do know him, but you don't know what he's feeling, what he's going through, any of what he might be wrestling with or what he might be feeling. So I would say if you can find some stories from some gay men telling their stories, what did they go through? How did they experience things? And I was hoping I could recommend some books, but I realized I am much more educated because I'm transgender with transgender issues myself. And I could recommend a lot of memoirs on transgender individuals. I don't have any books that I can feel like I've recommended that I can recommend because I am familiar enough with them about gay issues. But I can say I can recommend some great podcasts that we've done here, in addition to the couple that you've listened to. Those are really good ones. But I would say go back to the one from June 3rd of this year, 2024, where we interviewed John Paulk. And he told his story about trying really hard with conversion therapy and why that didn't work. And we'll be revisiting that one here again soon because we've got some additional things from him that'll be coming up. Watch for that one coming up in the next few weeks. Or you can also go back to the podcast from April 7th of 2024, where we interviewed Brian McNaught, and he is also a gay man sharing his experiences growing up in a Midwestern town and how things were so difficult for him and how he navigated things, and how you can be supportive when you don't know much. And then another one that I would recommend is from February the 4th. We interviewed Matt Bonikowski on being gay. He talks about how others see me and how I see me, and the difference between outsiders' perspectives and what he went through. And you find that those two can oftentimes be very different. And those would be a good place to start on educating yourself, is just listening to some stories and see what does it seem like for somebody that has gone through coming out as gay.
One thing you haven't mentioned in there is whether you've had the conversation. You say, I think my son may be gay. Well, that implies to me that you haven't had the conversation yet. Once you have the conversation, everything gets easier, much easier. He may want to say something to you and he's just looking for the right opportunity. He may be afraid to approach you because he doesn't know how you're going to react. So you can prepare in some way that would let him know that you're willing to accept anything that happens. And I would suggest you try to pursue that conversation as quickly as possible.
We've got some great tips on how to do that right after this.
Hi, I'm Andy Barrett, a Lutheran pastor and a supporter of this podcast. I see Transcendent as a ministry. I've pointed many people toward these recorded conversations full of so much heart and care and warmth, as well as some of Joe's jokes, which are hands down the worst part of this podcast. But even they make me smile. I'm one of the many genuinely blessed by Transcendent, and I encourage you to join me in supporting this podcast by giving as little as $3 a month. Go to transcendent.com and click support.
When I came out to my now ex-wife, I prepared for it by having a conversation with her beforehand. And I said, there's a conversation I really need to have with you, and it's a really important one for me. And it's a really big deal, and I'm worried about how it's going to go. I want to make sure that it goes well. I'm not ready to have it just yet, but maybe we could have it tomorrow or the day after that. And I just want to make sure that you and I are both ready to have a conversation that it's good. I don't have anything I'm going to spring on you, or I did, but I don't have any, I'm not cheating on you, or there's nothing like that. But there's a conversation about some things internally that I've been dealing with that I really want to talk to you about. And I want to make sure that we're in a good place for it. Now, Minnie, for you, one way that you can prepare is by, after you've gone through and reflecting on your feelings and you've done some education and you're ready to have that conversation, to approach your son and say, hey, there's a conversation I'd really like to have with you, and I want to make sure that we're ready for it. I want you to know I love you, and I want to have this conversation because I love you, and I want to make sure that we're ready for it. Can we talk about this and just have a conversation about the conversation before you have it, so that you can both know that you're coming to it in a good head place?
And one of the keys to that situation is always communicate with love. If your son does talk to you about his sexuality, respond with kindness and openness. If you're the one that's approaching it, it's the same way. You might find your son is very defensive because he's not sure where you stand with this. Let him know that you love him unconditionally. That is step one in the conversation. You love him unconditionally. That is a very, very big deal. Unconditionally means whatever I hear, you're still my son. I'm still your mother. You still mean everything to me. Whatever the situation is, I'm there to support you.
Very closely related to that, don't force the issue, because he needs to set his own timetable on talking about it. Maybe he's not ready to talk about it. And we've all gone through things that we know, I'm not ready to talk about this yet. And the golden rule applies here. Do to others as you would have them do to you. We know that you love your son, and you might have trouble imagining what he's going through if he is in fact gay. And you don't know. It may be that he is just a little bit more effeminate and completely straight, or he might be bisexual, or there could be a lot of things we don't know here just yet.
You haven't given us any clues in that area why you think that, but we know you do. And so that in itself means you have to have the conversation.
And you approach it the same way that you would want to be approached if you had a really sensitive and difficult topic that you were having difficulty talking about. I'm sure if he had an easy time talking about it, he would have already talked to you about this. The fact that he hasn't probably means he's maybe not ready yet, or maybe he hasn't even thought about it yet. So you want to make sure that you are approaching not only in love, but in a way that makes it very, very clear to him that he gets to set his own timetable to talking to you about it. But those things on its own, it's going to be a good preparation for you. But with everything that you've said there, that is almost certainly not enough. And I would say the best thing that you can do is find your own support. Find a supportive group. Find some people that can lift you up and be there with you as you're going through this in a way that they're going to help you to be loving and to be supportive. And Dad, where would you recommend, as somebody that has gone through this yourself, where did you find support? What kind of places did you turn to as you were dealing with me coming out?
Well, as I started to share, and that took me a while, as I started to share with friends, I began to discover that most everyone knows someone who is gay or lesbian or transgender or something like that. We say, I'm not sure this is correct, but we like to say, if you know 10 people, you probably know someone who is LGBTQ in some form. And I'm sure everybody knows at least 10 people.
I think we can safely say.
Yeah, that we can safely say. But I would look first at saying to somebody else, a close friend, or maybe somebody else, I wonder if there's a lot of people. I don't know anybody who's gay or lesbian. Do you? You know anybody like that? And you'll be surprised. I would say probably if you talk to 2 people, you'll find an answer.
You are always coming to me with a new story about somebody that you've met now. Just recently, you met somebody on the airplane and they said, oh, you said, I have a transgender daughter. And they said, so do I.
Yes. And that happened because my wife, your mother, was wearing a pair of socks that said pride. Now that's something you'll learn, that's a word that we know is connected with the LGBTQ community. And you're wearing something pride, or maybe there's the pride colors, which is kind of the rainbow, and a variety of other colors that go along with it. And those kind of things tip people off that I'm one of you. I'm part of that support group.
I'm an ally.
Exactly. I'm an ally. Well, what happened here is this woman was sitting in the airport, facing us in chairs, and she noticed the socks. And that's when we brought up the idea that we had a daughter that was transgender. And she said, so do I. But what really was helpful to me is after we spoke for quite a while and exchanged a lot of information, she said, my best friend is on the board of PFLAG. PFLAG is both allies and LGBTQ people supporting one another. There probably is a PFLAG group near you somewhere. I suggest you Google PFLAG, PFLAG, and see whether there is something in your area. If there isn't, there's something probably within 50 miles. There you will find a lot of support. There you will find people with stories. We say often on this podcast, no 2 stories are alike. And you're not going to find somebody whose story is exactly like yours. You've got your own story. It's being written right now, and it'll continue to be written. it's worth it for you to share with others, and you'll be surprised actually at how proud these people are of their children, how proud these people are that they have such a close relationship with them, like Raya coming out and being transgender and coming out as a woman. I can't wait to tell people. I'm so proud of her. I'm proud of the fact that it was such a difficult thing to do. You can hear also, if you listen to our very first podcast, which came out on September 1st, 2022, you'll hear her story and you'll hear why it was difficult for me to really understand. But now, she's kind of like a star in my book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not sure that I'm a star in my book, but I appreciate you saying that. And that really goes a long way to, I think, demonstrating how we should be as parents. I hope that my children feel like I think that they're a star, that every one of my children believes that. And we all want to act that way towards those that are closest to us. Now, you mentioned that you don't believe that this lifestyle is right. We believe that the more time you spend educating yourself and learning and listening to stories, that you'll realize that there's not really anything different about it. I have a friend that says, you know, that LGBTQ aspect of me, she happens to be transgender. She says, me being trans, that is not even close to the most interesting thing about me. And when you really get to know people that are gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender or any of the other identities that fall under that LGBTQ plus umbrella, you discover that we're all just people, and that's one small facet of who we are. Just like you don't think for somebody that is straight, you don't think, well, that's really weird that they're attracted to somebody of the opposite sex. That's one component of who they are. You think of them in terms of their personality and the way that you interact with them and the kind of jokes that they tell, whether they're good jokes or kind of dumb jokes from time to time.
Well, I would never tell any of those.
You think of who they are as a person. And it's the same way after this. It might seem like an overwhelming obstacle, but when you focus on the relationship, you'll discover it's just like anything else. And all relationships have obstacles that we get through, and we navigate through them because of that love.
These people, all of these LGBTQ people, tend to be a minority. They're not the majority. They're a minority, but it's a large minority. I am part of a minority myself. I'm left-handed. And because I'm left-handed, anytime I run across someone who is left-handed, we connect automatically. But that's just one connection. I happen to know some left-handed people that I think are not too cool. And that's okay. We're just people like everybody else. That's one factor of who we are. And it's such a minor factor. It's the same way with LGBTQ people. It's one factor of what they are. Some of these people are artists. Some of these people are social workers. Some of these people are nurses. Some of these people are doctors. Some of these people are veterinarians. And some of these people don't have any job at all and are homeless. They're like everybody else. There is no difference. No difference at all, unless you think left-handed is a difference that's going to separate you from me.
Right. Those things don't define us. They're aspects of our character. They're aspects of who we are, but they don't define us. One of the things that is an aspect of your character that doesn't define you is that you are a listener to a great podcast called Transcendent. And Mindy, that's not your real name, but we're very grateful to have you write in today. We hope we've given you valuable information. And for the rest of us here, thank you for tuning in week after week. We hope that we've given you some more tools that you can use to help improve your relationships.
You might know somebody that you should share this with. With those who are concerned that they might be finding something out, we want them to hear. And if we can help you in any way, we want to hear from you. So you can email us at transcendent@gmail.com. We read every one of these, and if it's exciting and you want us to answer, we'd be happy to answer on the air. And with that, we'll see you Monday.